Integrity. Why is it that some people think you can't have it and be successful? Let's talk about it. Welcome back, Wisdom Walkers. And if you're new here, welcome to my channel, Life Lessons Learned. I'm going to talk about the integrity that I've had throughout my life and how sometimes it does seem to come into conflict with your career, your job, or who you're communicating with. But for true integrity, if it comes first, those other things go to the wayside. So I'm going to share my experience with you during the time that I worked as a car salesman. And you guys all know what they say. Can't trust a car salesman or a lawyer, right? And that wouldn't be true, of course, for all of us. But trust me, I understand, especially having worked this one. I'm going to share two instances where, first of all, for me, integrity means no matter what the situation is, I ask myself, what is the right thing to do? Not what's the right thing to do for me or only what's the right thing to do for the customer, but overall, what is the right thing to do? Because if you can answer that, then you've come up with the right thing to do for you, for the customer, and the company. So let's get into this. In this first instance, I had a young woman that came in looking for a vehicle, and she wanted a candy apple red Ford Explorer. Those are very beautiful, okay, especially if you like that color. And I was working with her, and she was telling me all of the features she wanted the vehicle to have and what she was willing to pay. You know, the normal things that we go through when a customer is talking about what they're looking for and what they're able to afford. And this lady was very congenial, very nice, very friendly. And, she also told me the outlook or perspective that most people have about used car salesmen or even new car salesmen. And I get it. And I, assured her, I don't do any of those, I don't want to say, uh, tactics and techniques to tell people one thing. For instance, your car note is going to be this. And then when we get to the bottom line, it's 50 or $60 more a month than what we had agreed upon. And sometimes I get it when you're trying to do financing and you're thinking you can get it at a certain percentage rate or interest rate, and you find out you can't. But that's totally different than just snowballing someone all around. So she gave me all of her information. We went through the whole approval of the credit and everything. Everything turned out great. And we were had inventory, so we actually had what she wanted on the lot. And I asked her if she would like to test drive it. And of course, she was excited about that. So we did that. She loved the vehicle. So during this time, and I should say that sometimes, with car sales, it depends on how quickly someone is able to put cash down, whether they're able to get that particular vehicle that they wanted, or we may need to, order the vehicle in with their specifications and features and things like that, which is fine. It could work out either way. Well, she had agreed to come in the next day with the funding for it from her, credit union or bank, and that she would have a cashier's check for the down payment, all the things that you would be doing. So I was like, cool, excited. Well, the next day she came in, as she said, with the agreements with what she needed to have. And I went to the lot to get the vehicle, and this vehicle all of a sudden was nowhere to be found. Okay. Her candy apple red Explorer that she had fallen in love with. So I'm like, well, maybe they took it to get gassed up, or maybe they took it to clean it. So I went to the department that knows, the vehicles that have been sold, what's been sold recently, and that kind of thing. And you guys won't believe this, but a different salesman had sold that vehicle after this lady had, driven it and everything and agreed to buy it. But he sold it the night before that same, so the day before. So it was the same day the lady had come in. A different person came in. They had cash, well, not cash on the spot, but the down payment on the spot, and they sold it to him. Which I get it that on a business perspective, you sell to the one that's there with the cash. I get that. So I was thinking that I could just order her vehicle. Of course, it would take her longer to get it now because she's thinking she's going to come and pick it up. Um, and I wanted to ask her first if that would be okay. So she said, dang it, I wanted it this week, but I get it, whatever. And she wasn't upset with me or anything. She was like, but why would they have sold it? We had already made this pact and everything, and you can't tell customers the backhand tactics that go along with some of the practices and some of these career moves. So I went to my manager and I was explaining to him that, she would rather for us to, order her new Ford Explorer. And my manager said, and I get it, in order to order vehicles, there's another cost to them and they're really wanting to sell what they have on the lot. So he calls me in the office and he tells me that I need to talk her into getting a forest green Ford Explorer, brand new, of course. All the features she had, the only thing that was different was the color. Now, you guys know that if someone wants something that's candy apple red, even if you gave them a bright orange, they may go for it. But forest green, I was like, those are two different spectrums right there. It's not going to work. It's like me going into a store saying I'm looking for a bright red shirt and they bring this one out. And I'm like, no, I want this color. Do you see the difference? So I was like, I don't know if that's going to work. And he said, well, go out there and try. And I'm like, okay. I mean, sometimes you never know. People may be like, okay, it's still a new car or whatever. So I went out to her and I know how to communicate really well and put things in a positive spin, but I just wasn't feeling it in this one. But I did. I went out and did my best and I said, oh, you're not going to believe it. I mean, we could order that one and it would take longer. I said, but we have another vehicle that we can have you look at. It has all the same features, da da da. And the manager had one of the guys pull up the vehicle. So, usually if people actually see the vehicle and can get in it, they're okay with being talked to something else. But my thing is, if you're going to be paying on a vehicle for 3, 4, or 5 years, you really have to be in love with whatever color it is that you have, because you're going to pretty soon start regretting that. But that's neither here nor there. So she looked outside at that vehicle, and then she looked at the manager, and then she looked at me. And the way that she looked at them was like, dismissive, like, yeah, I expected them to do that, pull this crap. But you, I mean, we had talked, we had communicated, we had bonded, we had, you know, connected with one another. And then here we were trying to do a bait and switcheroo on her at the last minute. So she leaned in. I was sitting at my desk just across from her. She leaned in and she said, you know what? I know that this is not your fault. And I know that these guys are trying to get you to convince me to buy something I don't want. She said, so I'm just going to be polite and tell you that this doesn't work for me. And I can go to the Ford dealership down the street and get my candy apple red, Explorer. And so again, with me, as I said, my integrity always says what's the right thing to do first, not what best for me, what's best for us selling another vehicle. And I saw that she was really hurt and disappointed that she had an agreement with us, and we were not only not living up to it, we were going to try to convince her that it was okay for us to do that. And so I kind of let out a slow sigh and I said to her, you and I had connected, and I know how excited you were about getting that candy apple red Explorer, and I was excited for you. And I simply cannot, in my heart, see you driving off with a forest green one. I said, so there's no hard feelings. I'm not upset with you. I do not mind losing a sale under these circumstances. So I said, so when you get that Explorer, drive by here, say hi to me. So that was how I handled that one. And it was kind of devastating. Well, I was kind of embarrassed to even bring the forest green one up to her. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me right now? But she did that. She went and got the one that she wanted. It was the next day when she came by and she stopped and she said, hey, Sherry, come out. I've got it. And of course, the manager and the sales guys, that knew what the deal was looked at me, and I went out there and hugged her and congratulated her, and I told her she did the right thing, and she was so happy. You guys, if you had seen the look on her face for buying what she wanted when she wanted, and with people that had honored their word with her. So I wanted to share that story because sometimes we think that we have to forego or give up or put our integrity on the back burner in order for us to succeed, but that's not succeeding. And if you can have customers know that you have integrity, and just to let you know, she actually referred someone else to come to me. And so that worked out really well. But you can imagine what would have happened had she, well, she wouldn't have bought the forest green one anyway, but she definitely would not have been willing to send someone else my way after that debacle. So I always say I don't understand why companies don't just do things right, because if you did, that's the word that would spread out, and those customers would tell other people, and you'll continue to have a successful, thriving, profitable business. This whole thing about let's just not be truthful, let's make their car payments more than what they said they could handle. That just never, I never did those kind of things in that practice. Now, the second incident that has to do with integrity, which I guess most things do when you think about it in life, was a young student that had come to buy a vehicle, and she was English was her second language, so she was Asian, and really nice, really quiet, really reserved student. And she didn't know much about cars. She had explained to me that her dad was helping her to get a vehicle because he was still in Taiwan, but he wanted her to be able to have transportation so she can go to school, go to work, and do the things that she needed to do. So he wasn't buying her a brand new car, but he wanted her to have a dependable used vehicle. And we all know how used vehicles can be. But what I did is I always check my inventory, and I only sell the top-notch used vehicles. And by that, I mean vehicles that haven't had, of course, any accidents or any issues going on with them. They had low miles, were still, running and very well, and would still last for quite a while. So I wound up getting her that, and then because it was a used vehicle, I did have her get a warranty, some type of a warranty, a vehicle service contract with it. So in case something did go wrong, she wouldn't have to be out of pocket by too much. So she agreed to that. Um, the deal went through, all everything worked out. About I want to say 2 months after she purchased the vehicle, there was something that was mechanically going on with it. And so she brought it into our service department. And it was something that should have been covered under her warranty, but for some reason they were saying, it wouldn't be covered because of, I can't even remember what the reasons were that they were coming up with. So if you guys know me, I got a copy of her contract, read it thoroughly, made sure I understood it, and then I took it back to the service department, because they were telling her she would have to pay quite a bit of money. And I was like, her dad helped her get this card. She's a young student, she doesn't have a lot. And I know those are not issues that the company is concerned with, but these were things she and I had connected and talked about and bonded with. And I talked her into getting that service warranty, saying if something happened, uh, so I took it to the service manager, and he was like, "No, we can't approve it." And I was like, okay, so what can we do?" And he's a manager, so it's not like he's the owner. So he was like, "You need to go to the owner." And remember, the owner, if you ever seen my best line interview, my video that's entitled My Best Interview Line, you'll know that I was with the owner when I was getting interviewed. The owner was the one that interviewed me. So I had a good rapport with him and everything. So I, knocked on this door, and he weighed me in, and I gave him the whole scenario, what was going on and everything. And he wasn't grilled about it, but he was pretty um, fair. And so he was like, well, she did just buy it a few months ago. You know, she has the warranty. We'll go ahead and cover it. He said, go ahead and let the Ed, which was the person in the service department, know that it's okay. So I was so glad that I was able to go on her behalf to get that situation resolved. And that would be good if that were the end of the story. But a few weeks later, she came to dealership. There was nothing wrong with the car at this point, so everything's going well. She's not having any more problems. And she had an, her father with her, and he spoke no English at all. So she was translating for us. So she had told her father that this was the lady that sold her the vehicle, that I was really nice, and that she had a problem with the vehicle, and they said she would have to pay a lot. And she, because of me, she was able to get the work done that she needed without having any out of pocket costs. And her father, um, you know, held out his hand to shake my hand, and he was saying it was good to meet you in his language, and she was telling me that. But I'm a very personable person, and back in the day, I was a person that would hug people, and so I grabbed instead of he held his hand out instead of me shaking his hand, I grabbed him and hugged him, like close to me, and his eyes got huge, and so did hers, and she went like this. And I said, "What? What's wrong?" And she said, we do not do that in my country. We don't greet each other like that." I said, "Tell your dad he's in my country. And this is how we greet." And so she laughed, her dad laughed, and I laughed. And later on, I actually invited her over to dinner to my house because, she had already brought the vehicle and everything. And it wasn't like I was showing favoritism towards a customer. And she was really, really became a very good friend of mine. And actually, when she did go back to visit with her parents, she sent me pictures of her and them in Taiwan. And her dad was like waving, saying hi to me. So that wound up being a really good experience for me as well. But really, what I want to say is you don't have to choose between success and integrity, or doing the right thing and integrity, because integrity is doing the right thing, and it winds up being right for you and everyone else involved. And sometimes it doesn't seem like that. I know the old saying, good guys finish last, but that simply isn't true. And you have no idea what the ripple effect is for things in life and people and events when you've done the right thing. Some things you'll never, hear about or ever know, but those people will go on to share those experiences that they've had with you and with others, and it does make an impact with them. So this is Sherry Brantley. This is Life Lessons Learned. You guys all know I say knowledge is in the knowing, but wisdom is in the doing. And the learning of a lesson is the application of it. I'll be happy to hear all of your comments. Please share them below. Talk to me about a time when I don't want to say lost your integrity, but when you were hesitant to have it on the front burner, or the times when kept it intact, and what the difference and the results and the outcome of for you and for others involved in that situation. I'll talk to you guys later. And to my wisdom walkers, thank you for continuing to watch my channel. For the new people, I hope that you're so inclined to subscribe. Thanks. Bye bye.